All right. How we doing, everybody? Good. All right. Good deal. Well, before we get going, I'm sure you guys discussed Jordan Lewis and his injury, but first let me just talk about the dude and all that Jordan means, and he really represents all the stuff I love about our defense. He's tough, he's smart, he's a dog-ass competitor, he brings it, he's a great teammate, so he will be missed. And it's easy sometimes to say coaches' cliches, next man up and that, but there's a dude behind that injury too, and we'll miss him. We love him, and so that's a hard one for us to deal with, but we certainly will. But I did want to recognize all that he has. He's such a fun competitor to be around. It's an absolute blast to coach. So we'll miss him, and he'll make his impact, felt here, after, as the season goes on. He'll add value in different ways, but, we'll definitely miss him. So just thought I'd hit that with you guys, and it was good to get back on the right side of getting the ball. And so, I think I probably saw I was not pleased last weekend. So when I came in to talk to you that early or whatever it was last Monday, so it was fun to have some chances to get the ball in the second half and to see the guys deliver on that. I was really pleased just to see their relentless energy and effort to go finish on some plays. And so that's us, that's our style, and it was good to see that. And we still got a lot of things that we feel like we can do better, and so those are the fun parts on a game when you win, to say, let's take the next step, let's keep pushing to go. And so when you see the head nods and knowing that there is spaces for us to keep rocking, that fires me up as a coach. So all that said, let's get it rocking in here.
And David Moore, Dallas Morning News. Assume you've had a chance to talk to Jordan, just
Yep.
how he's doing there, and can you talk a little bit about Bland and how you'll proceed with looking at different scenarios?
Sure. Well, first talk about Jordan last night and again today, and just wanted to let him know, how important he is to us, and that he's going to be missed. And I thought, if there's a play to get injured on, it might as well be an interception. We laugh, but he is such a good competitor. I just want to say, you'll make your presence felt, when you can. But it was more just we got his back, and that's why I wanted to let him know. And it's tough, and there'll be a couple dark days ahead, and those emotions are natural to have. But know that he's such an important part of what we do and how we do it.
And just as far as with Bland and looking
Yeah,
at
and I think,
different options.
and like most games, you got to look at all the packages and where your matchups are, and I haven't had all the way to chance to dig into that yet. But certainly a few weeks ago, we were pleased to see Bland, coming in, and he got a lot of extra reps when Jordan was injured during training camp, and that's really where he was one to, make a mark at, playing outside and inside, and so he and others, will move into that spot some.
You had a meeting with Michael last week. You was talking about what y'all went over and how did you apply it to the game. Certainly that, and also can you talk about that play on the tight end, the relentless effort you had to change the game?
For sure, and I thought that would be the play that no one knew, but people knew, so that was good, But it is that style of play. And in fact, I got a text from a college coach. I'm showing those two plays to my team tomorrow, and I just felt those are the type of energy and effort plays that can change a game, and you don't know when they're going to happen. You just got to go. And that happened to be one that the next play, Law just, wrecking it up to knock a ball around and Anthony to get it. That was kind of the momentum shift because we're about to go down 13 to 10, right, in that space. And then to go back the other way, get some field position, change the field. I thought, man, what a cool moment in the game that happened. And so there was a couple plays that he had that I just thought that relentless nature was on display. And so it was such a cool play. There was actually another screen earlier in the game that I saw he and Dante and Dorrance. There was Donovan was coming back. There was a 3rd and 15 screen maybe in the first half on their end of the field, and Donovan kind of made the guy bounce outside, and all of a sudden you felt these other guys just woof. And so when you see us rotate players in and out of the lineup, it's hopefully to see more plays like that, to see guys really hauling ass and being fresh to go make plays like that. But Mike has stood out, and it was fun to show that one to the guys today, to say you don't know when they're going to happen. You just have to go, and he definitely went.
What was that part of what you talked to him about last week? Because he talked about sitting down with you and going over some things after the Eagles game. I don't know what you guys, can you share what y'all discussed?
I won't share a lot, but I will share some. Just, usually I'm the crazy uncle, so that's a good role, but I'm also the one that, hey, come here, shut the door. And these are plays I think you can make. And so we just had a good conversation about that. He's not the only one I do that with, but in this case, he is such a competitor that he did not like to watch him, and the next words out of his mouth were, challenge accepted. And so, you know, it's kind of like heard and understood. I get what you're saying right now, challenge accepted. And so that part I knew he heard me and what we said, and I thought that was the play I was most proud of him for the game, because he just made a decision to say, I can go make this play. And so I was really proud of him for that play.
John Machota, The Athletic. Speaking of Mike, what's your advice to him about him being held and it not being called?
That's a good question. It's almost like the good basketball player. He fouled me, right? You know, like, no, he didn't. You know, so I would say those are the ones that are out of our control. And so, you know, on any good play, there's going to be some give and take back and forth to go. So they're going to get called some, but not all the time is what I would tell them. It's not something that we discuss a lot, but we don't have control over whether they are or they're not. Kind of like just us moving around. Sometimes we can get a false start, you know, just by, you know, encroaching on the line quickly to see if we can get a guy to move. Sometimes they call those, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they call a holding, sometimes they don't. So I say you just got to continue to just battle in for the next one, even when it feels like it's not going your way, and say, all right, I'm ready to go attack him on the next one, because you're not going to certainly get called on every one. You know, the receiver thinks the DB's holding. If you'd come to practice and you see guys doing this all the time, you know, that's kind of part of that example. So no big advice other than just playing the next play, because you can allow yourself to get jammed up thinking about the last one. How come they didn't call it? Or, you know, almost feel like the victim as opposed to the warrior to say, you can hold me and I'm still going to get there. So that would be my advice to him.
Dan Quinn of Sign Out His Sports. Each of the offensive touchdowns yesterday came on series that y'all gave them via a turnover. How much do you take pride in that? And I mean, do you talk to your guys about something like that?
We do. In fact, Jordan, when we do, you know, talk about creating takeaways, it's creating takeaways for the offense. And so it's not just creating takeaways for the sake of that. It's for that purpose, to play complementary football. One of the things I do love about our team, if you could be in there in the locker room afterwards, to see the excitement on both sides of the ball, or really in all three phases. Sometimes if you didn't know who was who, you wouldn't know who was playing on which side of the ball, because of their general, you know, juice and enthusiasm for one another. And I think that's pretty rare on a lot of teams, but it's not for this one. And so playing that complementary style is a good thing. And so that's why this group really is a team, and they do feed off one another. And the energy I even spoke about it a few weeks ago when I watched the video of the reaction of the players when they were making plays. There was, you know, a catch by CD, and you saw Trey jumping up and down, and vice versa on the offensive guys. And that's the whole reason to get it, just so they can get the ball and go score with it. But the remarkable part is their connection they have. Like I said, if you came in that locker room, you wouldn't really be sure who played what position, because they were generally just juiced for one another.
Absolutely. And going back to your meeting with Micah for a minute, you said sometimes your crazy uncle. I think Micah said this was a father-son chat.
Yeah.
That's how he described it. How do you decide when it's time to have one of those, and how differently do you approach this with different players? Like, what about Micah and that this week was time to shut the door?
Yeah, I'd say sometimes I can tell when he's chasing a play or being frustrated by something. So I wanted to make sure the best way to play winning football is this way. And so it was just one of those easy, cheap lessons, Jory, that I didn't want to miss the moment. And so, you know, tomorrow to be with another player on another topic. But it was a good one that I felt just trusted my gut on it, honestly, to say, let's get together for 5 minutes. It wasn't some long-standing, you know, meeting that took 3 hours. It was just, hey, I want to point out some things in your game that I wanted to show you. And way back when we first met one another, you know, he said, I want you to coach me hard. And so those are kind of part of it, too, to point out the plays that are hard, too, because in this season he's made a lot of impact plays already. But I wanted him to know there is another space that you can go to. And so when he said challenge accepted, I knew that he had heard.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. Last year, Micah went to the bye and had a little, I guess, self-scout. And obviously you had one with him last week. What does it say about his maturity level that he's a young guy, that he can accept that criticism or constructive criticism? Yeah,
I'd say he's a rare competitor, really beyond his years. And that's his superpower. You know, like, he is just rare in that space. So if there was a part that he wanted to improve on, he will find a way to do that. And so a lot of football, you would think, would come easy to him based on his physical traits, but there's the mental side for him that I saw that play before. I know what that's coming back to, so he can process things quickly in a game, especially if a play or a situation is going to repeat itself. Oh, you mean like it happened 2 weeks ago with so-and-so? And I'll say, yeah, exactly like that. And so that part, I would say, it's the rare competitiveness, and he's always kind of, looking to dig into it. But it does give you some time to reflect during those moments. And for us, we'll talk about that next week. But when you do get into a midseason report, you always want to have a self-check to see where you're at, what you want to improve on, and move from there.
Dan Todd Archer with ESPN. What's Anthony Barr's impact on your ability to move Micah back and forth?
Yeah, it's big, Todd. And the reason being is Anthony can both play on the line. So you've seen Anthony play on the line and Micah back some and vice versa. So you have to have enough pass rushing ability to be on the end of the line, which Anthony can do. And just having him and Leighton behind the ball really allows, these are two accomplished, with it linebackers, allows us to move Micah around, some down, some back. So having him here has been a big part of that. So the addition of him, and then already had Curse, and having some of these guys who are long and tall and fast to move into different spots. For me as the coach, it allows us to put guys in different spots, not only by game, but sometimes by series, and it allows us to utilize them in different ways.
And then with DeMarcus, does he have it's not the peanut punch, but he's done this a few times, it seems like. Does he have a knack for that?
He does have a knack for it, and honestly, Todd, it is the violent nature in which he plays. He's aggressive, he takes his shots, and he's also brings that to life for some other players, and he challenges them. He's got just a good leadership quality about him, but he doesn't just talk it, he's the one that will walk it too. And so it's good to see that from him. But yes, Todd, he does have a knack. There's been one last year at Tampa I can directly remember in the opener. There was another one up at the Giants that I directly remember in this game. And so he just has a good timing about it. He's going to, I know I'm going to make this tackle. Now how do I go and add the extra shot into it? And I thought yesterday was I know we got more takeaways, but we had a better mindfulness to go attack the football when the guy was still held up. There was people digging and going for it. And so I felt it from him. I felt it from others as that was happening.
Michael Gelkin, Dallas Morning News. What you like about Sam Williams' play style, and can you highlight any instances, I'm sure there have been some, in practice where you've had to dial him back and say, okay.
Oh, yeah. He and our other rookie tackle have had some practices now. Yeah, they have absolutely battled. There's a couple 9-on-7 plays. Say, okay, Sam, you're out. These two are going after it like it is 100% game day. He has a lot of DeMarcus's traits as a ball player in him. He's got strength. He can play violently. And so when I see them together, sometimes Sam reminds me of that kind of style. They're different in terms of how they pass rush, but both of them have real strength and are really willing to throw it in there. And so in the run game, that's the type of player that you want to say, not only can they set the edge, but they can go be a factor in the run. I think you've seen that with Sam, the TFL out at the Rams game, and some ones yesterday. And we had a good talk today about there was about 89,900 people that thought potentially there was going to be a penalty on that play. And so those are not the kind of odds that we want to go with. So a good teaching moment for him. But I think it's just, Michael, the nature and style that he plays. I just see it's going to increase the more experience that he gets. And you probably heard me say in the beginning of the year with some of the younger players, there's some on-the-job training that goes along with playing in September and October that produce better Novembers, Decembers, and Januaries because you took the chance to work through some tough problems. But if you think they're not ready, don't put them in, they're not ready, don't put them in, they never quite develop. And so you have to put them in and you have to live with some problems early on. But my experience has been you do it, by the time you get to the later part of the season, they're not having those growing pains anymore. And so I knew there would be some with him, just like there was last year with Micah and Osa and some of the other guys as they were coming up through, but he'll get better for it.
You told us before, as a coach or a teacher, it's about building a relationship with the student or player and then kind of walking through with them to get the most out of them. With a player like Micah, who is special, do you coach him harder because of who he can be, or do you only coach him harder because he's willing to accept it?
I would say I coach him harder because he's willing to accept it. And so I think not every player is exactly the same, and that's why sometimes it just takes that longer time to build trust with somebody. And when you have it, then it's really close and connected, and you can probably coach harder and take somebody to a deeper place to, to hopefully find what their best is. And not everybody drinks the Kool-Aid right away. It takes time to, earn that relationship and go. And certainly, like my example from last year was Malik, and you guys know how much I love, being a chance to coach him. But he was harder to get to know and to build trust with. And then I would say by around this time last year, maybe even now, Thanksgiving, that time, our relationship got tighter and grew as it went. And then as it got into this year, communicating with him is such an easy thing for me to do. He's an extension of the coaches out on the field. He's such a good communicator. So that might be one example, but not everyone's the same. And that can be challenging as a coordinator because you're not in every room all the time. So you have to find your moments of when you can connect with somebody differently, knowing that each of them, are different. So it does take some time to build that when you're not, as a position coach, you may have this one group that you're with, almost all day, every day. And as a coordinator, you don't have that same access all the time. So you have to find your ways to build those. And I enjoy doing that. I really do.
Kyle Gilman's DallasCowboys.com. Last year, you and your staff had kind of talked about learning lessons with a young Micah Parsons as the season goes along. How have you taken those lessons and applied that to Sam Williams and a young Sam Williams in his rookie season?
Well, I think, and certainly Adden, our defensive line coach, he's one of our very best teachers. And so knowing not everybody does it exactly the same, what's the best way to have Sam understand, which is different than another player. And so finding those unique ways of how they learn, and he needs one-on-one extra. This guy needs to just do walkthrough. This one needs to really see it on the film before he can apply it to how he wants to do it. And so I think it kind of goes back to that part of the relationships and getting to know the person to say, all right, how do we best help you get there? And Sam's been an example of that. And one thing that I do admire about him, he really leans on the veteran players and asks their questions and wants to know. And when you think he's not paying attention, he's paying attention. And hey, remember 2 weeks ago when you said X, Y, and Z? And you said, you remember that? He goes, oh, yeah. So those are moments that you have to remember and know that some of this is his first time doing it, where it's not some of the veteran players. So it may take some extra reps, and that's why I think that on-the-job training is such an important part of it.
How do you get guys to buy in when you got the snap counts at 14, 15 snaps, and when they're out there, they're playing with a sense of urgency? Because everyone wants to play.
Yeah, that's for sure, and that is a difficult part of it. When you have a big, deep crew that rolls hard, you want to be able to play everybody because we'll get everybody's best. And it does speak to the unselfish nature of the group, because that's kind of, everybody wants to play more and get more time. And it's a challenge. It always is. But hopefully, by the way, we can feature the guys in packages to allow them to do their things really well and then highlight them when they come up. I think that's the big part of it. It might be a guy like Carlos Watkins who could really be square and strong. He had a couple good plays, and maybe the 16 or 17 plays, but they really mattered. And I think as a coach, we have to highlight those when they come up and say, hey, this is a really important play or a really important job that you did. And so we try to highlight those as often as we can, but it's not easy.
Dan, Jerry talked yesterday about how, in considering anything before the trade deadline, you want to be careful about progress stoppers and all the young guys you guys have. When you have guys like Sam, guys like Duran, what kind of conversations do you have with the front office about what you might be interested in or what you really want to give the guys here a chance to do?
More we talk about the players here and where are they on their developmental scale to push. And to me, that, Jory, is as big as anything to say of the guys we're pushing to develop, where are they? And how are they coming along? And are they game ready? And what do they need to improve on? Because what they may have needed 8 weeks ago may have changed over the 4 weeks. I think keeping in constant communication about their ramp up in different spots, because often a lot of them who we're developing aren't playing. So we're getting to see Sam, we're getting to see Duran some. Obviously he played more on teams, but for the guys that aren't getting active reps, how are they doing in the practices? How is their technique and communication and progress coming along? So I think it's more in-house, how the group's doing in their developmental stage, because as we get into next week, it kind of shifts again to say, all right, we're at a midseason point, what kind of progress do you make? And as you guys know, like when you're developing somebody, it doesn't just go in a straight line all the way. You wish that was the case. There's weeks, we took a step back this week, now we're climbing again. And so that developmental plan, you're hopeful by November and December, it's up here where it started in September, but it doesn't just go, it's up and down as it's going. And so I think it's important to give honest and real feedback to the player so they know exactly where they stand. Sometimes in the NFL, a player can feel bullshitted a lot. They've been in big-time college ball, told them this, told them that. So, like, they really respond to direct and accurate feedback. Like, thanks, Q, nobody told me that. And so we try to be really specific with them and let them know when they're doing it right, and we try to let them know when they've missed the mark.
And one more. Scoring has been down across the league this season. I don't know the
Amen.
I don't know the exact numbers about how much after this week versus last week, but I mean, last week it was most in a decade in some places. Why do you think that is, and how much do you think that's individual games versus trends of defensive coaches, offensive coaches? Like, how would you?
Yeah, I would have to think it's more individual games than a trend. And there's so many good offenses and players, and so maybe it's just, you know, one of the ebbs and flows of a season, and as it works through, we're kind of right in the middle of it all. But usually the best teams on both sides of the ball are really hitting their stride this next half. Early on, new people, injuries, how does it go? So I would say, I would bet it's more just an ebb and a flow as opposed to systematic change.
With Sam Williams, you hear a lot around the building that he's only scratching the surface, that developmental ceiling, he's got ways to go before he reaches it.
Yep.
And yet he's improving. How do you evaluate, one, that a player's got a high, and not only that a player's got a high ceiling, that
Yep.
he can reach his game, but that he'll allow you to help him to reach that ceiling, or allow himself to reach that?
I've always felt that a player who has a high ceiling, it's important that they have a good idea of where they're at. Because sometimes a player may think they're performing at a higher level than they really are. No, I'll beat everybody. I'll do all this when they're really not. So I think like having some self-awareness about where you're at is a good thing. And sometimes the first year coming into an NFL system can be humbling, where I can beat this guy kind of doing what I wanted, to now this guy's really good and I got to beat him with my technique and go. So like sometimes those early failures aren't the worst thing. And I'm not calling anything he did a failure, but I'm saying like it just doesn't come so easy. And I was actually worried some for Micah that some of it was coming early for him, that he was able to beat people, and how would he respond when, you know, he faced the Trent Williams of the world who don't get beat very often, and you better win on some different techniques and some different styles. And so for Sam, he knew he wants to grow and wants to get better. I think as long as you have that, Michael, that the attitude to improve and grow is there, then I think you have something that you could become special. If the player already kind of thinks they've arrived and haven't had a development, like, why do I got to do this extra shit? Then you're just like, man, you're missing it, bro. And so Sam is not that. And so the fact that he's willing to put the extra in to get better and asking all these questions and wanting to find, you know, kind of get to the truth of how he wants to play, that's good. Because sometimes a player can look at Todd and his game and then Michael to his game and like, what's your game? Sometimes you can look at so many other things that you forget what you're really good at. And so, you know, I want to work on spinning us. Well, how many times have you done that? Not many. Like, why would we start that today? You know, like that. You know, we can work that another day. Like for right now, let's work at the stuff we're going to be exceptional at. So self-awareness in terms of a player improving is an important part of it, and not everybody has that.
Terrence will wrap it up.
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah, I don't.
Anybody else want more?
I don't want my game like.
Self-awareness?
Can you teach
I don't
self-awareness?
want my game like Todd.
No game. I don't think you can enhance it, but I think you better have some level of humility and self-awareness to become excellent, because very few people are just so talented they can beat everybody with their physical skills in our league. So I would say you can enhance it, but I think innately it better be in there to say, I want to get better. And sometimes you have to have a couple of, this is harder than I thought, moments to say, I got to put in the extra, I got to find a way. And the best of the best usually do that. All right, you guys have a good one.